So as we get into the conclusion of Spiderverse, what we're going to find here is that things are pretty straightforward. That again, we pick up right where we left off in the sense that when we had left off in the last video, we had seen, of course, that Kaine had been killed, that several other spider totems had been killed, and that all these rows were really leading to these the spider group converging on the Loom world in order to confront the inheritors. It might have been a little more premature than was initially planned, but ultimately this is where we end up at, and this is what we do when we pick up in this video. Now, of course, Peter Parker, I guess, chimes in and says that Uncle Ben needs to get Gwen Stacy out of there, but Gwen Stacy chimes in and says no. And this is very important for Gwen Stacy's character, because what this is basically doing is it's Marvel telling us that Gwen Stacy is coming into her own, that this entire conflict, this entire Spider-Verse was really more of a rite of passage for Gwen Stacy. It was a way for her to step away from someone who was still learning, who was still coming into her own and becoming a Spider-Woman, to someone who is solidified as being one of the foremost Spider-Women. That is to say, she knows what she's doing now. And so again, what we do is we switch to Morlun, and Morlun is continuing to, I guess, start with this ritual. He's drawing the blood of both, I guess, Kaine and Silk. Now again, Kaine had previously been killed, but Silk is still very much alive. And even then, we of course see that, for the most part, this ritual is 2/3 complete. The only thing that Morlun needs from here is the blood of Kaine, or I'm sorry, the blood of Benji, of the Scion. And so what we do is we see that as Morlun is getting ready to, I guess, deal the killing blow, as he's getting ready to stab Benji with a knife, that the knife is taken away from him. The knife is stripped away, and the knife is done so by the spider totems, or I guess the spider group, who have arrived to confront Morlun. And so what happens here is kind of a back and forth between Peter Parker and Morlun. And what Peter Parker does is he basically calls Morlun's bluff. Peter Parker says that he's noticed this entire conflict, that Morlun had never traveled to Earth 616 to try to capture him. More specifically, Morlun had never actually traveled to where Peter Parker was at, regardless of where he was in the multiverse, to capture him. And so what Peter Parker basically does is he tells Morlun that he's scared here. Now Morlun says no. Morlun says that he's killed a multitude of Peter Parkers, but at the end of the day, we know Peter Parker's right here, that regardless of all the various versions of Peter Parker that Morlun may have killed, that Peter Parker from Earth 616 is the only one that has successfully been able to kill him. Now, of course, we know that Morlun had come back to life, but Peter Parker had demonstrated that when it comes to it, he's able to put his intellect to the task and to do what needs to be done in order to ensure that he comes out on top. And so again, what we find is that in the midst of this conflict, while all these various spider totems are fighting the inheritors, we find that that Kaine arrives. Now again, Kaine was the cast-off. Kaine was the member of the inheritor family who had been cast away by Solace. And again, one of the inheritor twins chimes in here and saying that it seems to be that with Solace having been killed, that the charm or the spell that's been put in place to keep Kaine away is no longer effective, meaning that Kaine can return at will. And so what happens here is that the initial reactions of the inheritors is to welcome Kaine in, to really believe they can bolster their ranks using the improved, effectiveness of having Kaine on their team. But Kaine says no. Kaine says that he's constantly been shunned aside, that he's constantly been pushed aside by the inheritors. And so what he says here is he's going to be fighting on the side of the spider totems. And this is what he does. He begins fighting amidst all of them. Again, he begins confronting them. But for Peter Parker and Morlun, this is really kind of a personal conflict here. This is something that really seems to transcend the idea of any possible ritual or any possible end to the spider totems. It seems to be that for the most part, Peter Parker wants to bring this conflict between him and Morlun to a close finally. And so what we see is that as a group is fighting, as a group is continuing to combat one another, that while Peter Parker is fighting Morlun, that he opens a portal. And when he does, what he basically does here is drop Morlun into the irradiated Earth. And this is what happens with the rest of the inheritors. Again, with Kaine on their side, the spider totems are able to pretty much overpower the inheritors. And so as a result, the inheritors are pretty much rounded up, and they're taken to the irradiated Earth, and they're put inside the bunker that had been created on that planet by Ezekiel Sims. Now again, what this basically does here is it means that the inheritors have this kind of buffer. The inheritors are stuck inside of this bunker, and they can't leave, at least not that we know of, without succumbing to the effects of radiation. Now, we don't know if the inheritors would somehow find a way to get out of this bunker and perhaps create another portal. But what's happening here is a lot of the spider group are really kind of shocked to see that Peter Parker is being so merciful here. And even the inheritors are surprised to see this. The inheritors would believe, under normal circumstances, that Peter Parker would simply just kill them due to the fact that they've killed so many spider totems. But Peter Parker simply says there has to be a better way here. And so what we do is we begin to bring this story to a close. When we bring things to an end, what we find is that in one of the more interesting turn of events, that Peter Parker seems to cast aside the notion that he and Cindy Moon need to stay away from each other. And in fact, he seems to embrace her here. Of course, he says that he's feeling very sleepy, and so as a result, he seems to embrace her, at the very least fall into her arms, indicating that what Marvel's going to do here is effectively continue with the whole one more day thing, keep Mary Jane Watson out of the picture, and bring Cindy Moon in as the most likely future love interest of Peter Parker. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and bring this video to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, let me know, and I will catch you guys later. Peace. Be sure to follow me on Twitter. There you can keep up with all the updates from Comics Explained and talk to me directly.